Today begins kind of the opening for our wonderful Spooktober. October, guys. We're gonna do some cool streams over the next month. Today, for instance, we're gonna do a day for night type shot. We're gonna make a spooky kind of like slasher film vibe thing. Now, there's a few things that I like to do with this when we grab our plate. We're going to be inside of Nuke today, and I'm inside of Nuke Indie right now. You could be in NukeX, you could be in anything. It doesn't really matter because we're making basically everything from scratch. We're going to be inside of Nuke today, and I'm going to grab our plate and we're going to drag it in. So we're going to start working on this shot. We will grab our plate. Please, there we go. Okay, first of all, I'm going to set this to view it in 709 because it's technically what we're viewing it as on our screen. And then, okay, so I can't tell you how many times I get into a film and the director, the editors, they come in and they go, all right, this needs to look like it's nighttime. And you get this piece of crap here. And you're like, okay, well, you shot it midday. There's direct sunlight on the actor. And, you know, like this car over here is like completely blown out. What am I supposed to do with that? And it's like, that's all very fair questions, but they don't ever, you know, give you good answers. They just go, well, hit the VFX button. And that's what we're going to do today. There's a few things that we're going to want to do. First of all, we want to bring everything down. So like, even if we just dropped in like an exposure node to our comp here, we could drop an exposure node in and then just literally bring everything down and kind of see what details we have left. Really, we actually aren't losing detail in the car or any of that stuff. I like to remove all light entirely from our shot and then kind of reintroduce it back. There's a few things that I might want to end up doing. First of all, if we look at our shot here, we're going to see how much grain there really is inside of our shot. There's not a lot of grain, to be completely honest. Usually you want to denoise your plate first. However, we're not going to want to reintroduce this grain. We're probably going to want to reintroduce grain from like a plate that is shot at night, because technically your sensor would be recording more grain than during a daylight shot. It just has to do with how your sensor is capturing in the dark areas. So for us anyways, we're probably fine with just crushing everything out and then creating our own grain later. Normally, I would recommend on all VFX shots to degrain it first and then later use something like DOS grain inside of Nuke to basically bring it back. Also, I'm going to go to my tool sets up here. We're just going to add in a default tool set. And this is going to be my default Nuke setup here. Nothing crazy, probably just taking out the exposure real quick. And then dropping our plate at the very top here. I also, this is actually an old thing. We want solid alpha. So what we're probably going to do, this is a very old comp here, but we're going to use an expression and then set that alpha to 1 inside of our solid alpha. This is just so that you fix any kind of like merges that you had in the past. So I'm going to drop a grade node in. Now, when we lower the exposure, the general warmth that we have here of this image is kind of an issue because it was shot during the day. The lighting is very orangey orange, and we kind of want to make everything darker. So right now, what we're really grading is kind of like the background, and we want this background to be kind of bluer because in nighttime, the warmth kind of goes away. So we're going to suck the warmth out really. And we can do that a few different ways. I usually like to go into the white point here and then kind of like move it towards that warmer area. And you can kind of see the entirety of the background getting a little bluer. And we're going to try to find an area that we're pretty happy with. I like to, first of all, make it pretty blue. And then I like to add in a saturation and then desat it. I don't like too blue of things, but what we're trying to do is really make this background here a little bit darker. And then let's desat that a little bit more. And then we're going to change this to stops of exposure. And then let's bring this down a tiny bit as well. Okay, gotcha. Now, our original plate is this, and then this is kind of our BG color grade that we want to have. Our BG color grade is really just for the background. We might want this car to be even darker. Right now it's really blown out, and it's because the metallic surface of this has the sun hitting it. And if we go to this, you can actually see how bright it is in our RGB scope values here. So if we wanted to, we could probably specifically drop in another exposure node or something like that. Let's just change this to stops and then bring that even further down. And then I'm going to drop in a roto node. Now, there's a couple things that we kind of needed to do before we got started, and that's just setting up the frame rate and then also setting up what the input resolution is, which is 2K DCP. So I'm going to take this mask now, and then we're going to specifically mask out this car. Luckily, we don't actually have a camera track on this, so it's a little bit up to our discretion. Or not discretion, but we don't have a camera track, so we just have to do this once, and then it doesn't have to be tracked on. We just have to get it to work on the surface here. We got a little bit of blending there that's going to happen. And there we go. So there's our car. I'm going to set that to RGBA. And here we go. So now we're going to be darkening out that car. I'm probably just going to throw a blur node in here and then just feather that a bit. And it's okay. That's a little more of a silhouette. Okay, great. So now we've got this darker kind of background there. I'm actually going to go to ActionVFX now. And the other thing is we are doing this for a horror movie, okay? That's the idea. So I want some atmosphere that's going to make it feel very moody and scary. And what better place to do that than ActionVFX assets? They've got so many good atmospheric assets. Whoopsies, zoomed out. I was trying to scroll down up here. I'm going to find myself a good ActionVFX asset. So all I need to do now is go ahead and import our footage. So let's go here. We're going to go back to our assets folder. And then inside of assets, you're going to see this fog lingering. Let's go ahead and import that. And make sure that is plugged. Whoopsies. And then we'll just grab this guy and move him over here. Let's go ahead and tag, because I'm using my own kind of like ACES setup here. I'm going to tag that correctly. Now here's our atmosphere. And we're going to kind of drop a transform node in. Now this is already 2K DCP, so we don't have to reformat it or anything like that. But what I do want to do maybe is let's actually keep the transform there. Let's add a merge node in, and then let's go ahead and also add another roto node. And just by swapping the merge inputs here for this to be A, I'm going to now go in and we're just going to roto this bottom edge. Well, realistically, what we want to do is we kind of want to follow some kind of path here. So let's do that. And we can't really see there, but we're going to do this. Okay, so I'll go all the way to the outside of that. And then for right now, actually, let's do it this way. We're going to make everything a mask. So let's go ahead and pre-multiply this and then change this merge input here to mask. And then that's going to give us kind of just this area. All right. So let's go ahead and blur that. We're going to use quite a bit of blur, a little bit more than that. Now for future, I'll probably just end up deleting this keyframe here just in case I want to make any changes again. Separately from this guy, let's, I don't know the proper way to, let's just do it this way. We're going to do a stencil, another roto node. And again, we're just going to go all the way over to our image here. Let's see, does he move? I think not really. So I guess that's the best area to do it at. We're going to zoom in on the background here and just going to kind of stencil out our backdrop of this fountain because we don't want the atmosphere going in front of this section. And if we do have atmosphere going in front of this section, we'll want it to be a different scale and in a different movement. This is all splashing water, so we could probably avoid too much of this section, but I think for the most part that should work. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's pre-multiply this and we'll go ahead and throw a little bit of a blur on it. I'm going to add a merge node in and we'll just drop it in. It's not going to look right because it's just kind of the wrong color. It's kind of the wrong everything, but we're going to fix all of that. So we're just going to do this right now. Okay, I'm going to change the gain of this and we're just going to darken everything down, I guess. I also kind of want to maybe color grade this to be, you know, kind of the general blue atmospheric vibe that we've got going on here. I also want to maybe multiply this by a higher number just to lift up the gray kind of atmosphere that we have. And what you're going to see is this section here is the brightest. What we probably need to do is darken that area and kind of like lower out the contrast between everything. I suppose we could do this a few different ways, but I'm going to do it this way because this is the way I like to do it. I'm going to kind of just like manually select this section over here where the light is a little brighter. We're just going to mask this section out on our original asset. And I'm going to take a roto and then just blur that. And if we take this gain now, we could like kind of lower it. What we're trying to do is we're trying to match the kind of grayscale of everything to each other. Probably need a little bit less of that. There we go. That's a little cleaner. It's going to get some dark edges in there, but you know, that's kind of like lowering the contrast without lowering the contrast, because we don't want the contrast to get lowered over here. Really, it's kind of just the highlights that we want to get rid of in that section. We might want to do this before all of this. So let's actually delete this transform node. And then I'm going to just use a keyer. And what we're doing here really is just exporting the alpha of our smoke. We just want the alpha of our smoke, maybe a little bit more opaqueness in certain areas. And then that's all going to get merged down to this section here. And then this is going to create our new alpha of our image that we're basically going to be dropping in. This is our image, and then we're going to be dropping in our atmosphere. I think we went a little too dark on this, guys. I might multiply this to be a little bit higher. Either that, or we open up this guy, and then we can lift his values. Probably do that, and then just get kind of like that spooky. Again, we're going spooky today, guys. So get that little bit spookier, bluish, light blue kind of atmosphere there that's going on. Next up, it's kind of important. Our atmosphere right now. Let's go to input and even see if it's playing at this frame. It is, but it's probably a little too slow. Yep, it's a little too slow. So I'm going to add in an O flow now, all the way up here at the very top. And then this O flow, we're going to just make this go way faster because we want it to feel very scary and very like, ooh, you know, like 80s horror vibe. So I'm just going to time offset this now by 1,000. Let's try that out. And let's just see what that looks like. Oh, no, actually 5 might be perfect. It feels very, ooh, that's good. Okay, great. So under our stencil here, let's actually merge. Great. Now, there's a few things that we're going to want to consider when relighting our actor here. Now, we have to bring our actor back in. When we bring our actor back in, we're going to need to relight him. Now, we already have kind of like a bit of a strong light kind of going on here. One of the interesting things that the switch light functionality does is not only does it remove the alpha as well as create the normals, but it also generates kind of like a albedo version of the actor where they're not lit whatsoever. I'm going to actually have to copy some of our materials that I created before. I'm going to just create these under elements. Let's go to material. Let's do this guy. And then let's copy all of this. We're going to want this albedo pass to be dragged in. We're probably also going to want to have we don't really need the key, but let's grab it anyways. Let's do normals. Let's do occlusion and roughness. We don't need specularity. So inside of our new comp, we're basically going to have all of these different material assets here that we're going to be using for different purposes. Now, again, the original plate looked like this, and that should actually look exactly like the key here. Although actually, funny enough, I just noticed that it blows the car out inside of this key layer. But the key layer does have an alpha extract, which is really good. Like, it did a really good job. Now, granted, this is just, you know, a very simple shot of a dude in front of a camera. So if you're getting like really blurry, shaky, you know, vibes going on, then that's going to be a little different than, you know, this shot here where the camera is literally not moving and the actor's just standing there. But of course, it also generated what my favorite part is the albedo pass. And what this is like a non-lit version of the shot, which, look at the difference here, guys. So you get this like light kind of going on the neck here. Now everything's flat. Now, wow, this is going to be awesome, because what we can now do is we can use this for relighting someone without lighting that's already baked into our shot. And then it gives us a normals pass, which this is pretty good. I feel like it's not as good as it could be, and I can't wait till one day it's as good as it could be. And then we have our roughness here. And this is supposedly, again, this is a little smooth for my liking. I wish it had more of like the skin texture and things like that, but it'll work for us for the most part. Like, it'll kind of like get us mostly there. And this will work better than not having it, honestly. And that's where we are at with our lives. You know, we only can use what we got. Dream tools. Yeah. So, okay. So how do we use all of this stuff? Well, first of all, we need to relight our albedo to live within inside of the world that we want to have it. And this means that we're probably going to be doing an exposure to bring it down, but then we need to relight that itself. So here's what I want to do. First of which, we're going to take this normals pass and we need to create an extraction of specifically a view or a orientation that a light might be hitting it at. So let's go ahead and do that. So first of all, I'm going to take all of these guys here and we're just going to move them out of the way. We're only dealing with our normals that we have here, as well as a constant. So I'm going to create a constant, and it's got to be the same exact resolution as the normals that you're comparing it against, which these are. So we're totally cool. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and delete this. I'm just going to re-add a new constant here. This is a fresh, brand new constant with the exact same resolution, of course, that we need. And then we're going to right click anywhere inside of here, and then we're going to hit manage user knobs. This is going to actually allow us to create our own user knobs in order to customize kind of like our workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and add a few different ones. We're going to create a floating point slider here, and I'm just going to call this equator. This is going to be basically the equator axis of your constant or your normals or your 3D object. And we're going to create a label called equator. Okay, so we're just going to say label equator, and then the name is equator. And then the value of this is going to be a 0 to 360. Okay, so really what you're thinking about is that it's the value of going all the way around an object, basically from top view. If the camera was all the way over it, you're just going to be going all the way around. So from 0 to 360. We're going to go ahead and add another floating point slider here, and then we're just going to call this height. Okay, and now this time, if you really think about it, is that the camera sitting plane would be 0. And then if you're at the very bottom of it, that would be negative 90 degrees. And then we need to go all the way to the top of it, which is positive 90 degrees. So we're going to do negative 90 all the way to 90. So now you got those two values there. Great. Now the only other thing that we really need to reference is the color of our constant that we already have. So let's go ahead and do this. We're going to do click pick here. We're going to pick from our current constant, and you see color here. We just now need to reference that color constant that we already have. Fantastic. That's basically all we need. So now we hit done. And then we're going to go ahead and adjust our color now. What we need now is our color to basically be referencing the values that we're inputting into our equator and height. because obviously right now everything is just like kind of stationary here. So let's go over here and then we're going to do, first of all, if we hit 4 on that, actually, I think, yeah, let's go ahead and hit 4. And then you're going to see all of these values here are set to 0. What we're going to do now is we're going to actually edit this as an expression. And then that's going to pop up our constant color that we have here of the RGBA values. Okay. Now this takes just some fancy math. Essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking the cosine with converting everything to radians. Okay. And then we're going to be adding the height value of this. And then we just need to multiply this against the cosine of the radians and then the height value again of, sorry, not the height, but the equator. So you're taking the cosine of the height against the cosine of the equator, and you're multiplying those two values against each other. And then now we're going to go to the green value here. And then this is going to be the sine. And then again, we're going to convert everything to radians of the height of our value. Okay. That's your green value. Now we're going to take the blue value here, and then we're essentially going to just be taking this, guys. Go ahead and just copy it, paste it. And we're going to swap this from cosine of the radians height. I think that's correct. And then this will be the sine of our equator. And then our alpha just needs to be set to 1. So now if we click OK, you'll notice that we can adjust that. Now I think I screwed up somewhere. If you guys want, let's go to edit expression real quick. You can see I changed it from polar height to just height previously, but this is the equation there. And then of course, that now we've got, okay, I don't know why the other thing was broken. And honestly, I don't care right now. We're going to just keep on moving on. Okay, great. So now we have this constant, and essentially what we need to do now is we're going to use a difference node. And then the difference node, we're going to be differentiating between the two here. Now our normal should be plugged into the A input, and then the B input should be the constant here. Okay, there we go. So now if we go to the A of this and actually see exactly what's going on, we now need to invert everything here. And if you invert your selection, now if we go back over to our constant, we can actually select certain portions of our image that we might want to have. This is pretty great. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our albedo pass that we have here. We're going to take our normals pass that we have here. Now, we don't really care about what is visible here. If you guys want to get rid of that, we can use a shuffle node. And then what we can do is we could just, break the different values here, and it's just black. But then if you go to the alpha channel, you can kind of see the lighting that we are doing here. So now if we go in and we add an exposure to our dude here, we kind of want to darken everything again. And again, we're doing something very similar to what we did with the background. Though this time what we're doing is we're kind of making it so that, it's our main actor. So we're going to be grading the shadows right now of what we are seeing. I kind of want to get rid of a lot of that warmth that we had there, because the warmth is from that daylight. So we're kind of like grading the shadows of what you would see at a nighttime kind of shoot. And then we're just kind of filling that in. Okay. So we're going to darken everything. Actually, this is probably okay, but let's darken it a little bit more. And now again, we're going to be adding everything back. So just because it's super dark right now does not mean that's how we want it to be, because you need your movies to be visible to people. So we're going to add another exposure node in, but this time we're going to plug it into our wonderful normals output that we just created. And then this time when we lighten everything up, we're creating kind of like this side lighting that we are now reintroducing into our shot, as if there was a moonlight coming from that angle back there. And this is going to give us a really, really nice kind of like, edge light that we can now light. And that looks a lot better already. In comparison to our daytime shot, we're now lighting it so that way we're getting kind of like this really pretty kind of like moonlight that's coming from the background. We're going to do a couple other things. This one works great, but now we also want to have a little bit of fill light, as if There's some practical lights from he's just outside of like a store or something like that. Think about it. He's on the street corner here. So maybe we've got some moonlight coming from back there. Well, then we also might want to have a little bit more of a practical light coming from maybe this angle over here to give a little bit of fill light as well. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to duplicate our node setup here. We're just going to paste it over here. And then now let's go into our difference node, and we're just going to view this real quick. We're going to go over to our user options, and then we're just going to create a little bit more of a fill from the side over here. Now, if we go back in, we're going to add a grade strip because this is a little bit more of a color thing that we're going to be doing here. We might want a little bit of an exposure as well. So let's drop an exposure node in, and we're going to grade both of these here like so. So the first thing we're going to do is we want a little bit of color brightness pulled in as well. Not a lot. As you can see, we're lifting quite a bit of our guy here. But now when we go in and we change the gain value here, we can actually add in a little bit of warmth to our setup. All right, fantastic. Now we actually can drop this in and see how this looks. And then we're going to need to add some more details to it as well. Let's go ahead and add a merge node. And this merge node here, we're going to drop it over onto our scene. And already, that's working pretty well. I might want to desaturate the whole thing a little bit. So let's go ahead and do that. Just an overall desaturation here. And then let's see. We also might want to bring everything down a little bit as well. Just kind of like in a general sense. Right now everything is pretty bright. Let's use an exposure node for this. We're just going to bring everything down a little bit. Awesome. That looks a lot better. Okay, now he's feeling a little, as I would say, video gamey. And this is where our other assets or other extractions that we have are going to come in. So let's go ahead and just, add a dot here. And then we're going to want to create a little bit more detail on him. Right now he's a little smooth, so we want to reintroduce this stuff. Now this is where I was saying earlier is that the roughness that we've got from that extraction isn't quite exactly what I would like. But it's not the worst thing in the world either, so we're just going to use it for right now. I'm also going to, let's go ahead and add a little bit of an edge blur here. Just a little bit too sharp of a line. I think that fixes that quite a bit. Let's see. Okay, now let's take this roughness here. And I don't know if we really want this roughness thing, honestly, because it's really not giving us all that much information. But this occlusion is definitely going to work a lot better for us. Okay, fantastic. So now after a little bit of an edge blur, we drop that over top of our render. Okay. Now, our atmosphere looks like it's still in front of everything, and that's something I need to check. Looks like we are losing our alpha channel. So on this multiply, what we want to do is we're going to pass the alpha channel, also merge the alpha. I don't think I want to merge the alpha. What I want to do is keep the alpha from our B line here and not lose it when we go through our A, because right now that's exactly what's happening. So I think what we can do is we could say BRGBA alpha A channel. That's fine. I didn't want to do it this way. If someone has a better way, let me know. What we're going to do is we're just going to shuffle. This is the way I've previously done it, but I don't think this is the best way to do it. So we're going to say take from the A input, we're going to take the alpha from this and then just feed it through the B input. So that way when you're getting through this multiplication, you're still keeping the alpha essentially. And so that way when we go back to our setup here, we don't lose that alpha. It just basically keeps this guy in front of all the atmosphere. Okay, fantastic. Let's go ahead and now we've got atmosphere behind him. Let's add a little bit of atmosphere in front of him. So we're going to go back to our handy dandy ActionVFX website and we're going to find ourselves some new assets to work with here, guys. I like maybe this to be a little closer to the camera. And I do also, let's see, let's go to global real quick. Looks like we're going to want the offset to be a little higher. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and first of all, we're going to crop. And then we're going to add a keyer. And then now that's going to give us the alpha here. I'll probably make everything a little bit more visible. Now, if we go ahead and merge this on top of everything, now we've got some atmosphere in front. Now he's really standing in the fog there. We don't want that. We're going to want it to be a little more subtle, but we're off to a good start here, okay? So let's go ahead and bring that down a little bit. Now, before all of our operators here, let's go ahead and change the gain here. Probably just overall kind of match that. And let's change this grade here to, let's first of all, we're going to disable it real quick. And then we're going to select this as like kind of like the whitest value. And then let's bring the mix back on there. There we go. So essentially what we're doing is we're saying, hey, set the white point to whatever this gray value is. And then we're saying, take that white point and then change the gain color of that to kind of like the color that we want it to be. I will say moonlight kind of coming through the atmosphere would be kind of cool. Let's add a roto node. We'll blur the absolute crap out of that guy. Add a grade node in, I think. And let's change the gain value of this. It's not bad. Let's blur this a little more, I think. Well, now we got to go find a reference image of a killer. That's like, let's see. I don't even know. Freddy Krueger. Is that what we're doing here, guys? All right. So now we're going to go ahead and roto this guy out from this ugly pixelated thing, but at least he's going to be a silhouette in the background, so we're not too concerned about it, guys. Why not key it? Because I literally didn't think about that. Okay, Nickies. Okay, there we go. Now we got our guy. Let's go ahead and crop this. I knew my screenshot was a little off too. Now we need to invert this, although we could use stencil as well. Doesn't really matter. I don't know, because I'm lazy. Let's go ahead and also erode. Edge blur? No. Well, we will in a moment, but I'm not going to pre-mult it. We will in a moment. He's in the background, so I'm probably going to ZD focus him, and then you're not going to really need it at all. So let's go ahead and add a merge in here, and we're going to use a transform node. Okay, so now we're going to scale him down, I think, and then we're going to stick him behind this. And yeah, that should work. So now we've got our guy here. Let's use a merge with the B input plugged into it, and then this plugged into our car roto. And then we're going to say, hey, stencil, please. And he goes, yes, sir. And then we're going to grab this guy and then put him there. Fantastic. Now, let's see. Let's use an exposure node now. And let's just drop him down to like basically nothing. And then we're going to use a grade node here to change the gain value, or what I prefer actually is probably changing the white point to be a little less red, just to match that not so green. Now, we need him kind of situated behind the atmosphere. Right now he's in front of everything. So this layer right here, we'll just delete. This is the atmosphere that we have. So let's move our dude to probably over here, just for easier access. For this A input, let's just plug that in like so with the hide the input. Let's go ahead and add a dot in with a merge associated with it. Plug that in behind our smoke layer that we have. We probably also want to stencil out certain portions of our guy here, because I mean the ground is still kind of visible, and our keyer didn't take it out. So let's go ahead and add a merge node with a roto associated with it, and we are going to just kind of delete that. So this now is going to be stenciled. So we're going to do that. So now we've got our guy here. Okay, fantastic. Now let's go ahead and after this whole thing, we're going to Z defocus him. Probably actually before this stencil, because this is the car and we don't want to change the outline of the car at all. So now if we have that in there, that should match everything a little better. So it's actually pretty close already. I don't think we need to do too much more touch-ups, honestly, on it. Swapping that to bladed, that usually works pretty well. And then now when we add the atmosphere in, we've got our guy here. Okay, fantastic. We're going to hand paint the shadows. There's a couple ways you could not do the hand painted shadow effect. So we're going to just take that whole frames and we can always like fade these out. I really like doing it this method because you can make them layers and then you can fade in the opacity of them. So that way if he's walking, you can actually have them kind of like appear that way. I do think he's a little too front lit and makes him a little too visible and he's too saturated. So let's change the saturation here. And then let's also go in and we're going to add a grade node at this very top here and just want to kind of like remove this light from his face. So if we can, we want to make him a little more silhouetted just on the face portion. We don't want to see his face, you know? Let's just pre-mult that. Change that to 50, I think. If we blur that while making this a little larger, I think it's going to get us closer to what we want. Oh, right. This has to happen. My bad. This has to happen after we apply the mask on all that. Okay, so now we're going to run into a problem where we're not seeing his face. Can't really see his face and it's against a black background. So from a cinematography perspective, you're going to get yelled at. That's not fun. So let's do some fancy shancies in here, okay? So what we want to do is we probably want to stencil out this mask at a specific area. So let's use another roto node here and plug that in. We're going to pre-mult this, I think, RGB8. And then we go back in and we're going to kind of want to keep this edge light. We're going to fake an edge light on our dude. Probably some eye lights as well. And then a little bit of a nose. Beautiful. Now if we go ahead and blur this a touch, we go back to our initial image here. We're going to get a little more visible there. There we go. So now his face is a little more shadowed. We're going to make magic happen, guys. It's what we do. It's what we do. There we go. Okay. So throughout this shot, I need this to be the final keyframe, I think. And then we're going to start the shot out here-ish. We're going to kind of like grab this section here and then he's crouching. Okay, so he's crouching. And this section here, we're just going to rotate him and then that way it looks like he's standing up, okay? Let's go back into the grid warp now and then we're just going to adjust this. We're going to have to roto out his body from behind that. And then I think we need to go back to our favorite website and find some more atmosphere. And we'll change this to that. Just merge that over top. Let's scale you down. Let's move you over. And then I think here we go here. And then that way it gets rid of most of the background. That works for the most part. Might want to also add some roto edges to it. And let's see, we're going to fade the edges here. So we'll do that. Just add a blur node in and then just feather that out, guys. Like that should work. And then we'll make that a mask. So now we have just our, not going all the way to the edges. I might want this to be a little thinner. So let's, there we go. That should work. Now, we have our Freddy Krueger here. And that color doesn't quite work for us, but we can fix all of that now. Okay, so let's add in a grade node, and let's see, we'll set the white point here to this. And then let's see, let's go here again, and then we're going to set the gain to, I don't know, that. I like how dark that is. That's pretty good. So now if we go ahead and enable that, it's going to be a very small amount of smoke, but you can see it just creates a little bit more of a silhouette for our guy. And if we move that up and over, and here we go. We're just going to want to do a few things. So we're going to want to stencil out the car again. And then we've got our Freddy Krueger character here. And then we've got the rest of the atmosphere in front of Freddy Krueger, which we can lessen that atmosphere a little bit more now. And then we've got the rest of our dude kind of set up here. So let's go ahead and look at that. And let's also not O-flow, time offset this by 999 frames to make sure it starts at 1,000. It's actually not bad. Like, I think I just need to fix the shadows on the ground, and then we're in business. Yeah, we need to fix that, and then I think we're in business, guys. There's another thing also that I don't know if you guys noticed or not, but there's like this weird lighting thing that's happening on his chest here that it's like the sunlight was coming through the tree, and it's creating like this weird kind of like shadowy shadowness on his body. That's super strange. So we could fix that. Yeah, let's fix that next, and then we'll call it a shot. So probably going to do that over here on this guy. This is where the majority of our dude is coming from, is through this piece. And you can kind of see what I'm talking about on his chest here. The light values are kind of adjusting on his and his torso here. Because if you do smart vectors, and then we set the value to a little bit higher of a value, we're going to just write these vectors. We can render this out to a pre-render folder. Whoops, you guys aren't seeing what I'm doing here really, but it's the albedo pass with a smart vector plugged into it, and then just rendering out the EXRs of that in order for us to essentially project onto his t-shirt a clean t-shirt. That's essentially what we're trying to do here. So what we'll do is we'll do a vector distort, and plug that into this. Let's oh well, no, we don't need the vector distort plugged into it. Whoops, I'm sorry. We need this plugged into our right node here. This will be our smart vectors. And then our t-shirt that we want to have, let's go ahead and give ourselves a little bit of room here. Let's use a frame hold. I think we're on a good frame for this. So we use a frame hold. And if we wanted to, we could do our paint work. So this is where it might be smart for us to use clone stamp instead of like a painting. And the reason why is because everything I do here, I'm going to copy paste to our normals. And I'd like it just to work rather than having to fix things. So let's see. Let's change this to 0.1, and then I think that should work. What we're doing is we're kind of diffusing that whole section there. Even blurring it can work. Now, by taking this, it's on a frame hold. Let's go ahead and just, we're going to add a roto in, and then we're going to select the portion of the t-shirt that we want, which is just like this portion of the t-shirt here. And this is like one of those things where, you know, I feel like most clients might not notice it, depending on like if you're working for large studio pictures. I feel like a lot of indie filmmakers that I've worked with won't even pick up on stuff like this, but it might come up in QC later. So it's always worth it to fix these things. So now if you take this as the source, and we're going to set this as our current frame, essentially what we're doing is we're saying, hey, use the vector distort now from frame 1021 all the way forward. And hopefully, if we play this back, the t-shirt should move and warp as the rest of the body did. But now it's not going to have that light kind of going across the chest here. Now, if we merge this over top of our original image, how visible is any of that crap? It is pretty well. Let's see, let's go to vector distort. Turn blur size all the way up. I'm not too concerned about it, and I'll tell you why. Because we already have a key of when that stuff is supposed to be here. What we want is just use the B. Can we... We'll do mask. There we go. Do auto alpha. So that way it doesn't lighten it. Why is this so much lighter? All right, there we go. Okay, so now that is going to clean out his shirt now. Unfortunately, we're going to have to do the exact same thing to the normals now. So, but luckily this is pretty copy pastable. Okay, so now our normals are cleaned up as well as our albedo pass. Well, there you guys go. I think that it's it. I think the only thing I'm going to do, and I don't want to cache this out anymore, but I'm going to probably throw a regrain on here from Furnace just to get like some nice night regrain in there. I am a fan of grain. Like, it's funny. I think as a filmmaker, I'm going to be very much a grain guy. And then let's use a keyer to take the highlights here. I want a little less grain in the highlights personally. So I don't know with the Furnace node if I can automatically do that, but what I want to do is maybe do this. Is that gonna work? So that puts it pretty much everywhere except for on the highlights. Yep. Beautiful. And then that gives us grain. Yeah, I like this. I think this turned out really well, guys. So this is our first render for Spooktober. I don't even know if that's the name we're going with, but I'm gonna try to do some kind of like spooky film concept VFX shots for the next month. So I'll see you next week. You guys have a good one. I appreciate you guys, and we'll chat soon. Bye bye.